beginning of the world, according to Greek mythology, was called chaos because there was nothing. From nothing came light, sky, Uranus, and Mother Earth, Gaia. Gaia and Uranus created 6 twins who are known as the Titans. 2 of the 6 twins were Kronos and Rhea. After giving birth to the 6 twins, Gaia and Uranus gave birth to 3 Cyclopses. The Cyclopses were giants who each had 50 heads and 100 arms. Uranus was very unhappy with these Cyclops offspring and forced them to return to their mother's womb. The pain of carrying the 6 Cyclopses so angered Gaia that she planned revenge against Uranus. She asked the 6 Titans, her twins, to help her. Her youngest twin, Kronos, came to his mother's aid. He castrated his father with a sickle and cast his severed parts into the sea. Kronos then married Rhea, his sister. They had 6 children: Demeter, Hestia, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus. At some point, a prophet told Kronos that one of his children would eventually overthrow him. In a fit of angry indignation, Kronos swallowed each of his first 5 children after birth so that they may never rise up against him. Rhea, full of sorrow of losing her first 5 children, vowed to never let Kronos repeat such a cruel act. When she became pregnant with their 6th child, Zeus, she tricked Kronos. Instead of giving him her baby, she gave him a rock wrapped in a blanket. Kronos swallowed the rock, thinking it was the baby. Rhea secretly smuggled her baby Zeus to Crete, where the baby was raised by nymphs. The prophecy predicted came to be when Zeus later returned and defeated his father in the battle between the Titans and the Olympians.
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
All right. Thunder clapping salutations, all you cognonauts out there. This is Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outside reaches of understanding. I am your host, as always, Nick, and I am joined by my 2 lovely co-hosts again, as always. Ayla, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Happy Monday. It's
Happy
a new
Monday.
week.
It is indeed. And we also have our other co-host here, Mike. How you doing, man?
Hello. I'm doing okay.
Hello. Good.
Hello. How you doing?
Good,
How's your
man.
Monday?
Good. We're getting by.
Right.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we really appreciate you guys listening out there in the interwebs. We have a really fun conversation for you guys planned around the Greek god Zeus. But before I get further into that, let me do a little bit of promotion on the front end for Thinkering.space. Thinkering.space is where you can find this show, as well as the Thinkering Report, If Numbers Can Talk, and The Plank with Joe. Go to Thinkering.space and you'll be able to find all of our links to all of our social media sites, as well as all of our archives of episodes for you guys. There are, I want to say, probably about 60 or 70 episodes on there. So if you're bored at work and you need something to listen to, please think about going to Thinkering.space. Otherwise, you can follow us here at Exofathom at Exofathom on Instagram, Exofathom on Facebook, and Exofathom on YouTube as well. Please give us a like, give us a subscription. We are going to be doing a raffle soon for all of our followers in an effort to give back to you guys. I think we'll be giving those details probably in the next coming weeks about how you'll be eligible as one of our wonderful listeners to be a part of that. But without further ado, let's start talking about the big guy himself, the man with the beard in the sky, Zeus. Now, I'm not exactly sure if I've ever had this conversation with you guys, but I'm quite, well, not quite, but Greek mythology has always been something I've been very fascinated with. And it started off when I was really young. Actually, Edith Hamilton's Mythology is one of the first books I read on my own volition as a child. And I think I stole it from my parents or something like that and snuck away. I still have the copy that I read as a kid. But I just remember being fascinated with the tales of, this rich sort of mythology that the Greeks had, and also fascinated with how almost tragic most of their deities were and flawed. And I always thought that was very interesting. But what about you guys? Have you guys been into Greek, mythology before? Have you read anything? Do you have any favorite Greek gods? What are you guys' thoughts?
Well, I realized at the beginning of this series that we're going to start here that I'm really into the mythical creatures. Mm-hmm. I just kind of lump them in. But when it comes to the gods, I mean, yeah, it's entirely fascinating. I had like one of those large children's picture books. So it had all the illustrations of like what they were wearing and what they looked like and what they did and their shenanigans. And I just thought it was always interesting because they have such personality and character, the Greek gods. Mm-hmm. So I think just from that level, I thought that was really fascinating. And then I've probably seen every movie with any kind of mythology, including Percy Jackson's The Lightning Thief, which I watched recently. So it's just good fun, I think, just fascinating stuff.
Certainly, yeah, I would say that they're very rich characters. Mike, what about you?
I kind of had a glancing pass at Greek mythology. I was kind of more like interested in astronomy as a kid at one point. Like I got oddly obsessed with Pluto, and through there I found out about Hades and all that fun stuff.
Right.
And as I got older, I kind of came again like just glancing passes at it, whether it be through class or like reading Dante's Inferno and kind of picking up like understanding like hell, and I guess again that obsession of Hades, I suppose. But as I got more into philosophy in university, that's when Greek mythology kind of became a bigger thing. Like, I still have the Iliad just sitting there. I haven't read it, and I got it from one of those take a book, leave a book things.
Right. I think I probably have a copy sitting around somewhere too.
Yeah. So it's become like this growing influence in my life. But yeah, I guess like favorite gods though, I always get stuck between three of them: Hades, Apollo, and Dionysus.
Yeah,
and I don't know why particularly. I don't like. I guess it's just kind of come naturally.
Maybe. And I think that's pretty fascinating too, because I think there's something about the Greek gods that kind of manifest different aspects of our personalities, and I think. To your point, I think you may just gravitate towards the gods that kind of represent or reflect your personality. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You could do that with like stories as well.
Right? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that, because there's so many angles, and there's 12 Greek gods in the pantheon, at least major Greek gods, and there's obviously demigods and minor gods, and it gets really convoluted at some point. But if we're just focusing on the main 12, they have a very wide gamut of the human experience. The concept of Hades. Hades always got the raw end of the bargain. I mean, Zeus and Poseidon and Hades all got their section of Earth, and it seems like Zeus was like, "Oh, I'm going to take the heavens," and then Poseidon's like, "Well, I guess I'll take the sea," and then Hades is like, "Can I take the Earth?" And they're like, "Well, no, you can take under the Earth if you want."
He's like, "Fine, but I'm going to get a 3-headed dog."
Yeah, exactly. I need a 3-headed dog to at least to keep me company. I mean, come on. All these souls are really, really dull.
But on the upside though, there's like precious metals and things under the earth.
That's true. That's true. And interestingly enough, Hades did have a helm of invisibility that was made of some sort of precious metal as well. So yes,
That's cool.
yeah, he was an interesting character. I mean, and not necessarily like evil in the idea that you might think of like the devil is evil. Hades was just, he was charged with looking over the lost souls and the dead souls of the underworld. That's just what he had to do. Like, it's not like he was, I'm going to take all of the death and, gung ho about it. It's just kind of the way he was destined to be.
It's like somebody has to do it, right? Take care of the unseen and watch over them.
That's right. It's a job that something had. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's cool because that's a kind of a direct juxtaposition to the Apollo character, which is much more of the hero's archetype and the prodigal son after Zeus, which is himself a prodigal son as well. So, yeah, I think it's cool. I think there's a lot of psychological mechanisms and aspects to which Greek god you most personally reflect with or connect to. And I guess in my opinion, I've always been a fan of Hermes. Hermes was always my favorite just because he was born tricking people. He actually, one of the first things he did was trick Apollo to take his lyre, which is his little harp thing. Like, that was the first thing he did when he was born, is that he tricked Apollo and stole all of his sheep and then traded his sheep back for the lyre that Apollo carried.
The original hustler.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. One, he so closely is tied with Loki, the Norse god of mischief, and that same sort of messenger god character, which I've always found kind of fascinating. Not necessarily the most dominant or the most brute strength, but very wily and sly. I always like those kind of characters.
Well, and you would too, right? Because Nick, you used to have what is that thing where it's like that shadow suit that you could put on and you could hide in the
suit.
yeah. I knew this level of trickery when I saw that he hid in the shadows for I don't know how long, just so that when his brother was walking by.
Oh yeah, it was probably about 20 minutes.
Scare the hell out of him.
It's worth it.
What, a trickster, you, Nick?
Yeah, never. Come on,
Never.
I'm a straight shooter. That's me. All right, well let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty. I know that the intro was kind of the birth of Zeus and how I don't know if you guys have any comments about that, but I've always thought that was a pretty interesting story, especially if you guys are familiar with the famous painting of Uranus eating his children. It's quite horrific. I think it's Goya.
Yeah,
something. One of those two. Yeah.
Goya is frightening.
Yes, yes, very macabre. But it's like this image of this old man that's elongated, and he doesn't look exactly human, but he's just eating somebody, and he has half a torso in his hands, and it's pretty gnarly.
He never meant for that painting to get out. He wanted
really?
to. Yeah, he painted it and was probably very much disturbed by it.
I would imagine so.
He's like, I can't show this to people.
Yeah.
But he's going to keep it.
I mean, it became one of his most famous paintings. So,
I mean,
it's the Streisand effect.
He's probably looking at what is wrong with me?
Right. Totally.
Could you imagine being an art collector, some rich, and you're like, let me acquire this painting. I'll hang it in my dining room. Where would you hang that? Aside from,
I guess that's
right over the bed.
Yeah.
I would buy it to burn it.
Oh,
hear all the souls come out of it. Whoa.
Yeah.
It is interesting though. There's the cycle of eating your children.
Mm-hmm. The destructive parent is a archetype for sure.
Yeah, especially to stave off something surpassing you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the kind of and I was going to bring this up kind of later on, but I'm glad you did. It's kind of like the allegory of Hamlet, the wise king dies and then the tyrant king is there. But it's interesting to me because again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I don't care. Whereas like in our more modern society, we separate good and evil. The Greeks never did that. They kind of inhabited, the gods were both good and evil. And so I just think that it's interesting that we kind of, you have Uranus, who's at one point a benevolent king, obviously. Then the news of his own destruction makes him a mad tyrant king, and it's only the prodigal son that can surpass his father and dethrone him.
Man, yep. That's
I mean,
some heavy archetypical shit there, dude.
Very, very. I mean, look at we have Hamlet, we have the Lion King, we have, on the Star Wars. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so funny because it's like, damn, even thousands of years ago, everybody hated their dad. That's so sad.
And like, is the underlying theme like all parents are afraid of their children?
I suppose it's like the idea of death, and then the new generation, surpassing your life. It's like as you fade away out of relevance, the next generation rises up, and I think that's an archetype for a purpose, because it's actually a part of a functioning society. So you can't have a king that overstays his time, because it leads to corruption, it leads to the kingdom coming apart, and so you need that injection of vitality every once in a while to bring in new and keep the rot away from the system.
Yeah, sort of like I guess tying back more to just living, like learning how to die gracefully in all facets of life.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, it is very true. I mean, that's
kind of harsh, but
it
it's
is
true.
It's a very
Learn how
stoic
to die gracefully.
If we're
It's
keeping in
like-
the theme of the Greeks, that's perfect.
It's like some Epicurean thing of like, well, if you lost a child, just make another.
That's right. What are you whining about? Come on. All right. So let's get into a little bit of how Zeus, after he was survived and basically went back to claim his kingdom from his father once he grew of age. So according to Greek mythology, Cronus overthrew his father Uranus and ruled over the world along with his wife Rhea. However, when he told that one of his children would be overthrown like him, he was also told. So basically it's like Uranus was told that one of his children was going to overthrow them. Then that was Kronos. Kronos was also told that one of his children was going to overthrow him. So Kronos had several children, and that's who swallowed all of the children at birth. However, the sixth child, Zeus, was born, and Rhea hid him in a cave and instead gave Cronus a stone in his clothes, which he swallowed. When Zeus came of age, he disguised himself as an Olympian cupbearer, poisoned his father's wine with a potion, and tricked him into drinking it. This led to Cronus disgorging Zeus's siblings, his sisters Hestia, Demeter, and Hera, and his brothers Hades and Poseidon. Along with his siblings, the Hecatonchires and the Cyclops, Zeus then fought against Kronos and the other Titans. He emerged victorious and overthrew Kronos. Zeus and his brothers then shared the world by drawing lots. Zeus took control of the sky and air, Poseidon got the waters, and Hades got the underworld. So I think it's interesting that we have like the not just one instance of a father like basically screwing over his children, but two. And it seems to be like there's some sort of theme there for sure. But I also wanted to point out that I think it's really interesting that Greek mythology, they concede that their gods weren't the first things here, which I think is really interesting, because a lot of religions claim that their God is always there before the creation of everything. Whereas the Greeks, their gods were born after the creation of everything. I wonder, I'm not exactly sure as to why that works, but it's very interesting.
It might like there's a very cyclical nature to these stories, right? Like with Uranus and then moving on to Kronos and then that kind of thing. So it does make sense where like within that logical base, if you just keep going backwards, that those gods they weren't the start of things. They couldn't have been.
Right.
That there must have been something there beforehand.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting because Tolkien kind of built his universe the same way. It's like they had the supreme god Iluvatar, who kind of created the stage for the other gods to come in, his children, who are the gods to the people of Middle Earth. You know, so there's this concept that Sorry, Ayla, what's up?
Oh, I was just going to point out how casually you slipped in some deep lore about Tolkien's universe. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Side
well,
note.
it's a Silmarillion, so I don't know. I've read it like 10 times, so I can remember it. Yeah, but I think that's kind of cool because it's recognizing something that's a little bit more primordial as the first creative force in the universe, and I think that's there's some truth to that. And further, I think that's interesting because likely the Greeks wanted to keep their gods closer to man than some sort of abstract. And so they had to kind of create a class of gods that they could model or they could attach human qualities to, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it gets hard to connect with like a purely abstract god, I think. So that and like working in human qualities, especially the negative ones like the flaws, I think it makes it easier to connect.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I think it's like it's bringing it down from abstraction. I think that's why a lot of people have such an issue with like the concept of the Western god being some guy in the sky with a beard. But it is because if the god was some, like let's take it the other angle. If the god was a spaghetti monster and spaghetti hadn't been invented yet, how would you ever conceptualize God? And would you even care?
Yeah, it's
If
true.
you had sauce.
They probably did have sauce, but I don't know if they had spaghetti yet.
In the beginning, there was the flying spaghetti monster, a hill, a tree, and 2 doors.
There you go.
There was in the beginning.
Perfect, and no bolognese in sight.
I did. So now they're screwed.
Yeah. Well, and so, I think we got into some of the questions I was going to ask about like the modern analogs of the stories of like the Tyrant King and the Prodigal Son. Obviously, we got to Star Wars and the Lion King and Hamlet before that. And are there any other stories that you can kind of think of as like big pop culture-y sort of stories? Like The Matrix is kind of like that.
Like I was just going to say the story of the Prodigal Son.
That's true.
A father with 2 children, one who is ungrateful, so leaves. And through that quest in the unknown, it's like the hero's journey, right? And he comes back and is able and is welcomed. So even that is huge and underlies a lot of pop culture things.
That's true, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Cain and Abel as well.
Yeah,
which is the same sort of thing. Ayla, what do you got?
Oh man, well I mean it's a little deep, but that movie Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
Oh, wait, which one? The original? The good one?
The one directed by Stanley Kubrick, obviously. Come on.
Clearly. No, I mean I got nothing. I think like Hamlet's probably my like go-to. In terms of like pop culture. I could probably reference some really dumb rom-com somewhere, but I think you guys hit the solid ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we know that there's only 7 original stories, so there's a reason that we keep repeating them. But I do find it fascinating that these stories have stuck with us for so long. So, yeah, it's a very cool, cool concept.
Yeah, like even like Hercules finding its way into animation form, right? Like it's a major Disney film.
It was such a tragic character too. It's so sad. For those who don't know and only seen the Disney version, Hercules does not get his happily ever after at all. So
Shh, don't tell them.
Yes, that's true. Which is it's kind of like a lot of fairy tales if you think about it. Most of the fairy tales that have been Disneyfied for a happy ending, but a lot of them do not have happy endings.
Oh man, if you watch it with the like any of the Disney films with the lens that you go on, like It's a Small World on, it's really creepy. It's really
Yes.
Well
creepy.
said.
Yes. All right. So not just, obviously Zeus was the king of the sky and wielded the mighty thunderbolt, and that's what made him the most formidable god out of all of the Greek pantheon. But he was also the god of many other things, and aside from being the god of the skies, he was king of the gods, and he also played an integral role in mankind's sort of interaction in society. So he was the patron saint of hospitality and guests, and he was ready to avenge any wrongdoing to a stranger, which is maybe where we get a lot of our hospitality towards guests.
The golden rule
Yeah.
philosophy.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think there's mirrors in other cultures where it's like
Mhm.
if you don't do the best for your guest, then
Mhm.
it ends really badly for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I know the Greeks aren't exactly the creators of these concepts. I just think that it's interesting that we have this kind of like, I mean, it's very old and it's been around for a very long time. But it's like we treat our guests when people come over. We want to be good hosts. We want to, like I know back in the medieval times, if somebody came to your door and asked for shelter, you had to give it to them, or
Yeah.
or you were considered like a dishonorable person.
Like Jesus
Mhm.
could be a homeless man, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He could be a beggar, even in Christian theology.
Well, and they often started off like that, right? Jesus's parents, when they were, Mary was trying to deliver, they couldn't find a place that would take them. She had to deliver in a manger. So it's that concept of like, all right, you guys are being jerks, and now we need to make a rule about being nice to guests.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then too, like if you spend time with some homeless people, like some of the characters you can say that Zeus or these other gods took, or godly figures took,
Mhm.
you find out that they have probably more knowledge about the 10-block radius around you than you would ever know.
Oh, very true.
They
Yeah.
know so much about
Yeah.
what's happening.
And if
Yes.
you work there, they know a lot about you.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I used to work in Santa Monica, and I know, we used to have a couple of homeless gentlemen that came to the store every day and just hung out. And I got to be friends with them actually, and a couple of them I spent many a day just chatting with them. And yeah, they know everything. They know all the politics of the other homeless people. They know all the people that live in the area. They know, like, you got to think that, when you're in that level of existence, you have to be aware of all the details that society provides you.
No, and it's like you do get like a God's eye point of view when you pick their brain on what's happening in the streets, and it's like almost a piece of Zeus is living in every one of them.
That's very true, and it's interesting. It's kind of like the outsider perspective, I guess, right? It's like being able to be put in that position where you're not really in society, but you get to kind of witness it as it, passes by you.
Yeah, and just for the betterment of, like, not even playing within the mythos, not even thinking that a homeless person could be some god. Just say hi to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Being
that
nice
simple.
doesn't cost anything.
That bit of hospitality.
That's right.
Yep.
And so, okay, not only was he the god of hospitality, but he was also the keeper of the oaths. And he did not like liars. And apparently the Greeks did not like liars. And if you were exposed as a liar, you had to dedicate a statue to Zeus at his sanctuary of Olympia. I don't know how you dedicate a statue. What if you can't build a statue? Like,
You better learn.
dedicate
you
it.
better learn.
You better learn.
No, I think you buy the statue, but then you have to stand there and say, like, I dedicate, and then you talk on and present it.
That is probably true.
I was thinking, like, we live in California. There's no way I can afford a statue here.
No,
I
certainly
see you
not.
with like a ball of clay trying to mold it. Shitty piece of statue. You're like, I just give this to you, Zeus.
Yeah.
It just looks like Gumby.
It's like shitty Zeus, meet Zeus. Zeus,
right.
meet shitty Zeus.
That's right. Then he was also the watcher of businesses at the Agora and punished dishonest traders. So it's really funny because like Zeus was just the government, right? Like he's just
Oh,
the,
one can hope. Have you seen our economic situation?
well,
Where
I
are
think
you
Zeus
now,
would be pretty
Zeus?
pissed off to be compared to the Fed.
he probably would be, but I mean,
And so a lot of people owe him some statues if he's.
yeah, that's very true.
No.
Maybe not our current government, but maybe the concept of government.
I was gonna say they're gonna have to stop that Moloch worship and switch over.
Oh, right, that's true. There might be a conflict of interest there. They might be into the Minotaurs a little bit more than Zeus.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But yeah, no, I just think that's really interesting. So it's like, to me, it's funny that we tied like and I think it's real only because we've come into this sort of secular age of Western civilization, and we no longer tie our morality to God. But I think it is really interesting that these concepts of just basic governance and honest society had to come from the threat of being struck by a thunderbolt, like the people basically had to be told like, you need to act right or you are literally going to be electrocuted from the heavens.
Imagine though.
It's almost like human nature is meant to be deceptive.
Yeah.
We need some rules.
That's right. It's almost like we don't know how to behave. And
well, talk to Nick's god, Mr. Treachery and Sneaky Sneaks.
Oh, no. He wasn't sneaky. Hermes was the god of messengers. He was
and
the
thieves.
god of... and thieves. Okay,
Sneaky sneak.
Well,
he was also the god of medicine and communication and,
Tomato.
Tomato. Don't judge me.
Thing.
Don't God shame me. Shit.
I mean, isn't medicine quote unquote the ultimate trickery? Like we're all gonna die, right? Like, who do we think we are? No, I'm just kidding. That's crazy talk.
You're just kicking the can down the road. That's all doctors do.
It's money.
This ought to patch you up for a couple years.
Yeah. Like there's nothing big enough to stop the bullet wound of death from approaching you, right? Everything's a band-aid.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Okay, Hades.
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, you're stuck with me after all of this, all right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and to your point on medicine, we still use the symbol of Hermes, the caduceus, on all of our medical buildings. That would be the pole with the twin snakes wrapping around it. That was the symbol for Hermes. And
weird that we have poisonous sneaky snakes as our symbol for health. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean dude. Once you start looking at the symbolism in this country and what all of it means, it makes you very unsettled about the reason we still use these symbols. I mean, we use them because they're powerful, but they also meant a lot of different things back in the day, and I don't know, like we're still using them with the same meaning or.
Where the superposition has changed. Like, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, exactly. Like the caduceus was meant for, like it's a magical wand basically, and now we use it as the medical symbol, with the snakes kind of representing the sort of like westernized version of Satan and the serpent, like the tree of knowledge, basically the twin snakes climbing up the pole to signify the tree of knowledge. It's very strange. It's very strange.
Or a double helix.
Or the double helix of DNA, yeah, which makes you wonder, like, okay, what the hell is going on? How did they know that shape existed?
100%.
So, yeah, that'll break your brain for a little while.
It draws connections too to even Mesoamerican pre-Columbian religious type things, like ayahuasca trips as well. There's a lot of snake imagery happening,
right?
There's, for some reason, that double helix, those snakes are very, very precious things. Like they're either cast as like demonic, the fruit of knowledge, sin, blah blah blah, or they're great sanctified symbols.
Life-giving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I
But-
think is interesting for sure. Ayla, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Okay, you're going to laugh because I was just thinking, like, what if in 100 years there's a revisioning of Snakes on a Plane, but it becomes this, like, really significant, powerful movie where, like, the snakes are deities and I don't know, I was just making a joke.
What
But
do you think it's not already like that? Samuel
Yeah, there you
Jackson's
go.
all of mankind battling all
it's
the little
actually
gods and
a
bigger
really
gods.
fun movie. I don't know why people hate on it. My dad loves it.
It's a great
Yeah, it's
movie.
good. It's good if you want to just
Switch
have
off
a
the
good
brain.
time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, yeah. So I, as I said, this is going to be more about the. Well, I didn't say this yet, but I'm going to. This is going to be more about the weird stuff Zeus did because, honestly, in my research, there's not very many great stories about what he did. So I decided to pull up some instances of Zeus being a major dick. I just thought that we could talk about that because, again, I'm really fascinated with this concept that, and not just the Greek gods, but a lot of, ancient cultures, they saw their deities as both good and evil. And so let's just see what I can bring up here. So Zeus may have been a benefactor and beloved by many, but he certainly was not without fault. Here is a list of times Zeus was a major dick. Here's first one is Zeus and Hera. If you were paying attention before, Hera is the sister of Zeus, one of the children that Kronos ate. And so here we go. Hera was one of Zeus's sisters. Zeus fell in love with her, but she refused his advances. Zeus knew that Hera had great love for animals and other beings, so he transformed himself into a cuckoo and flew outside her window and pretended to be in distress due to the cold. Hera felt pity for the bird and took it inside and held it to her breast to warm it. Zeus then transformed back into himself and raped her. Hera, ashamed of being exploited, agreed to marry Zeus. I mean,
Shame.
Oh dear.
Off
Oh
with his
dear.
head.
if we could talk about problematic for a minute, like, good Lord. And
Dude.
yeah, and so, for our listeners, I do apologize. There's going to be a trigger warning for the rest of these stories because, as I said, Zeus was a dog. He was a dog, and he literally just ruled his life by his dick and then regretted every decision he ever made. And yeah, so
This is what's wrong with society today, guys.
Wait, hold
We
on.
have these
That
people in
sounds
the
like my
beginning.
Saturday night. Sunday you regret it. Monday
That's
you
right.
forget it.
That's
Tuesday
right.
you're back trying to chase Saturday. You're fine.
That's so cheap, though. He's off there like, oh, I'm a little birdie bird. And then she holds it to her. First of all, I would never hold a bird to my breast. I don't understand why that's the first. Like, you hold it to your cheek. But then he's like, aha.
Well, if you're trying to hold it close, you're
Zeus.
holding it against
Yeah,
your
it's
chest.
true.
It's
And I
just-
shouldn't blame her. It's all
Yeah,
this jerk.
don't goddess blame right now. Jeez.
No. And the poor woman, she'd already been eaten by her father and then regurgitated, right?
Yeah.
Is that the story?
Yeah. And then she had to marry her brother.
Ugh.
Who raped her?
After,
Who, like,
after a
who was like a
non-consensual encounter.
Could you imagine, like, you're watching that, a bird
And
just
then-
transforms into your brother?
Oh my god.
And
So
then-
sick.
and
And then you
so
marry
bad.
him, and then he punishes other people for lying.
Yeah,
and then
we're
they
gonna
have
get
to
into
make a
that.
statue of him.
Oh yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm getting pissed. Okay.
Well, certainly Hera, never forgot the fact that Zeus did that to her, and she definitely made sure that his life was a living hell as much as possible. But the
Good.
problem is that he was a god, and so she just made she made life a living hell for any woman that came in contact with Zeus. That's for sure, and we're gonna get into that. But before do you guys have any more comments about the Hera thing? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Funny thing about Greek mythology is that there is no actual text for this stuff, so it gets interpreted throughout the ages. And so it's like I've been looking through my book of mythologies, and I was actually really surprised about how short all of it is. Like all of the little stories, like there are no more than a couple paragraphs because they're just not. There's no text to translate it from.
I think it's meant to be expounded on by the readers. I'm really curious how marriage by shame works.
Well, it didn't work.
Seriously.
It doesn't work out for Zeus very well because Hera, as I said, she's got an axe to grind for the rest of
Oh, there's some-
eternity.
Are there some plot twists? There's some. Oh,
Well,
I'm
she's
excited.
definitely done some bad things to other people. But here's another example of Zeus being a cad. Well,
Before you
Ayla,
go there, though, I'm just curious because, okay, so it says that she was ashamed
yes.
of being exploited, and that's why she married him. But at this point, isn't it just the kids? Isn't it just the 6 of them? Like, who's over here shaming her, or who's she worried about being judged by?
Well, I'm not really sure. I don't think that they really established a taboo about brothers. I mean, the only thing or brother and sister relations, but the only thing I can think is that, rape was not was considered a taboo. I think that, Greeks certainly saw that as a taboo because in a lot of their mythologies about Zeus, the things that he does against a woman's consent is never really rejoiced on. It was always met with, oh, there's going to be consequences for that.
Right. Yeah. I guess it's just because the way I read it is that like she felt foolish for believing him, so then she just had to kind of roll with it to save face. But for who? Because like when did the humans come into play or the other gods? Like,
Well, see,
you know
you're
what I
getting,
mean? Like,
as I said, I was just preface this whole thing saying that like it only gives you a paragraph sometimes about certain
Yeah.
things, and like Mike said, you kind of have to extrapolate from there.
It might
Yeah.
be some like high dimensional chess happening where she's like, all right, well, I'm not just going to let you get away now. I'm going to make your life hell. And
Yes.
I like
Why?
that.
Oh, she
other
definitely.
people hell.
And she definitely did that. And this next little story is about Zeus and Semele. Semele was a priestess of Zeus. Once, while flying in the form of an eagle, Zeus fell in love with her. Oh man. First, like these women should have just never went outside. Like Zeus was just falling in love with everybody. He fell in love with her, and then they became lovers. And soon Semele became pregnant with his child. As Semele started boasting that Zeus was her lover, Hera, the wife of Zeus, discovered his affair. She disguised herself as a human nurse and befriended Semele. When Semele confided in her that her lover was actually Zeus, she pretended not to believe and asked her to demand Zeus to reveal himself in all his glory. When Zeus visited Semele the next time, she asked him for a boon, which he granted out of love. She then begged him to show her his true godly form. Unable to break a promise, Zeus revealed himself to Semele. She could not handle the glorious sight and was consequently burnt to death. Zeus was, however, able to save the child by spewing the fetal into his thigh, or sewing the fetal into his thigh. This led to the birth of Dionysus a few months later. So there's a little bit more context to this one because I actually have read into it a little bit more. Hera convinces Semele to convince Zeus to show his true form, knowing that it would burn her to bits. See, Semele didn't know that. So this is one of those instances in which Hera gets her revenge.
Okay, and see, I'm glad that you said that because, like, when you're talking about him showing his form, I just thought like naked guy in a trench coat,
No.
like I lost it. She can't handle it. Oh, his glorious.
Look at my godhood.
Yeah. Well, it's
Anyway.
funny because like you're not like a lot of the head gods they're too magnificent to actually see in all of their true form. Like that's the same thing for Yahweh. I believe it's you can't look at Yahweh or else you will literally just your brain will dismantle and you'll die. Like
You mean Aeon from Avatar?
no, Yahweh, the Judeo-Christian God.
Oh, real life gods. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Avatar. I was like, what?
real life gods.
Relative,
Gonna have
I
a debate
suppose.
over that. Yeah.
But as we were saying, that Hera definitely she makes all of these women suffer pretty tremendously, and so yeah, I think it was just it, it just sucks, man, because like most of these women just they don't have, and they're not doing anything wrong. It's like they're just
Yeah.
existing, and then Zeus with his raging god boner like comes and like messes with them, and then they end up dying because
Hell has no wrath.
that's
Like
right.
a wife scorn.
Like a sister wife scorn.
Yeah.
Guys, sisters need to stick together, man. I'm telling you, this jerk. And then what's funny is Dionysus is the child of that. Like
Yeah.
so the kid just grows up and just drinks and parties all the time because
Yeah.
I mean clearly if that's flabbergasted.
Yeah, he was a demigod, so half human, half god, and he was the god of revelry and wine. And
I mean, to be fair, though, look at it from his position. His father burned his mother alive
Right.
and
Well,
then sewed him into his thigh.
yeah.
I don't even understand.
That's some pretty traumatic stuff to overcome in your development as a god.
Oh
So
my
wait,
god, totally.
how was he in his thigh? Like what?
What's that?
He sewed him in. So like at what point did Dionysus get out of Zeus's thigh?
A couple months later, Ayla, it said. A few months later, he just needed to gestate past the third trimester. That's all.
That's weird. Oh my god. Why are they getting so into it? Like of all the details that they don't give you,
Mhm.
they're gonna give you that detail. Like that's just
Of
weird.
course, because they're all kind of about the macabre. They really like this sort of like, the nitty gritty of their gods. Their gods are very flawed. I mean, like these aren't like that story alone. I wouldn't want to pray to Zeus. I'm like, dude, what are you gonna do to me, man?
Well, that's why you pray to Zeus.
That's right. Yeah. So you don't do that to me. Don't fall in love with me, please.
Oh, this is gonna get so awkward now.
It
How do
is.
I say no to Zeus?
Oh man. Well, wasn't it in oh gosh, this is Sparta. Is it Sparta? No.
300.
300.
300. Yes. Remember how they talked about like the chicks that were cursed with beauty ended up going up to the high temple where all those like jerky sage men were.
Mhm.
And so in like a lot of ways they viewed beauty as almost like a punishment because Zeus types will come after you, which I think is kind of an interesting way to like flip things. Which is
Yeah.
not nice,
Well, and,
but-
and that definitely happened in Hades' world as well. And we'll probably get into that when we decide to do a Hades episode in the future. But yeah, him and Persephone. Persephone was the bride of Hades, and it was one of those things. And it seems to be that there's a there's a trend in the Greek mythos that like if you're a pretty girl, you should probably just stay inside and not ever go out because
typical.
Yeah.
you might get in trouble. Oh
After-
man.
Shaking my head.
First you.
Oh, Aphrodite was terrible too. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, her and Hera actually had a feud. The reason that the Battle of Troy happened was because because Aphrodite and Hera got into a fight, and Aphrodite, I believe, considered Helen of Troy the most beautiful. Or no, it was the other way around. Hera considered Helen of Troy the most beautiful, and that pissed off Aphrodite, and that spawned a war between the Greeks and the Trojans. It's just like this 10-year 20-year war that was just because like two petty goddesses couldn't get along.
Couldn't figure out who is more pretty.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It's called her the tale of Helen of Troy. The saying is the ship that launched 1,000 the face that launched 1,000 armies or something like that.
Yeah.
It was literally the battle for her beauty.
Which is so interesting,
Aesthetics.
right?
It's so weird.
It
Yeah.
really is. Well, and it's like something people still chase today, right? Like you gotta be pretty. It's all about being
God.
pretty. And then it's like, but then you look at it and it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's silly. It's silly.
It's a strange, like double-bladed sword that ends up not doing all that well for the wielder. Like
Mhm.
beautiful women have it hard in the
Mhm.
sense of like actual personal growth and without all these external influences coming in, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think I heard a great quote by Aristotle, and he said, "Beauty is temporary tyranny." And I think that that's totally apt, because if you think about it, beauty is something that seizes your attention, and it doesn't last forever. But while it captures you, it is definitely tyrannical over your soul.
Yeah. Have you ever, what is it? Beauty is the promise of happiness,
Mm.
which I can start to see where there can be like tales of revenge and this sort of these sorts of themes of jealousy and stuff like that, when it's just the promise but not the actual fulfillment of happiness, and then the trapping that comes into having beauty be your tyrannical master.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that quote again about beauty and happiness? Say it one more time.
Beauty promises happiness.
So if beauty is also in the eye of the beholder, just trying to think. I mean, you could just go off on like all of the aphorisms about beauty and just start like looking at how that plays in our culture, even like just in Greek mythology and stuff. It's like, it's interesting. It's so
the pursuit of happiness as well.
Well, it's so hard to define. And even like that movie, The Craft. Remember the crazy one, like Nancy, that was just really mean and isn't a classical beauty, but there's like a whole following of people that love her. Like there's like to each their own kind of thing. So
the codfish looking one.
Okay, she was actually kind of. I mean, I thought she was cute in her own way, But yeah, but a lot of people didn't. I mean, she is really mean in the film, so But I just think it's interesting because, like, here Zeus is like attracted to all these beautiful women, but maybe they were just beautiful to him, right? And so it's like you turn it all these Greek stories in on themselves. Like maybe Helen of Troy looked just like that Nancy chick. We'll never know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think Mike is probably right about the concept of aesthetics and like obviously the Trojan Greek War was something that actually did happen, but the mythology behind it is iffy. So I think it's probably more just the allegorical idea that the Greeks really wanted to rationalize as to why they sacked Troy, and so they had to fight for something that was abstract and bigger than just some really no reason. It was because Helen of Troy was supposed to be married to one person, and then she decided that it was like it's Romeo and Juliet kind of. It's like she was promised to a Greek noble, and she fell in love with Paris, which was a Trojan noble, and so their love sparked the Trojan War.
Well, but then you also had like the backstory too, where you have like the king that she was promised to. Wasn't he like a conqueror? So like
Agamemnon.
He was taking all Agamemnon. Yeah, he just like wanted all this stuff, and so he united all those people, but like out of fear. And then like my favorite story is what's his name with the Achilles, and how like he didn't even care about the war. He just wanted to like kind of fight.
Oh, you want to fight for glory.
He wanted to fight for glory, and he knew that his demise
glory.
was going to be tethered to that war, and he fought anyway because he just knew. I don't know. It's just very like complex story.
I don't know if the mythology he knew. I think you're thinking of the movie, but I know what you mean exactly. But it was definitely for glory, and he recognized that Hector was the best warrior that they had, and he was hellbent on killing Hector.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think you've got the Iliad and the Odyssey, and like so Homer knows his perspective, but he wouldn't know. Wait, sorry, I'm getting all in the weeds, but I mean it's a fascinating story. There's lots of facets to it.
Yeah.
I do think we are kind of like prisoners to perspective, and I do think that like beauty is a driver of a lot of things.
Definitely.
Even like the most extreme is war. But I do also think that you can not so much generalize beauty, but you can find beauty in everything, in everyone. So there, it does make it interesting, like this long tracing of generalizing beauty to one specific look, which
Right.
harps on what you were saying, Ayla, about the clock face girl. Wait, who's it? Nancy? Clock? Yeah.
Nancy. Clock face. What do you mean, like Cogsworth?
Oh no, it must have been lag, but I heard clock face, and now it's just stuck in my head. But no, yeah, like that beauty thing and the triadic relationship also is it messes a lot of things up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, and especially in ancient story, beauty tends to be the thing that undoes the hero, and even a lot of times love is the thing that undoes the hero.
Like, what was it, King Kong as well? Like, it was beauty that slayed the beast.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. The last line of King Kong. Yeah.
So good.
Very good. Very good. Love the allegories. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about my favorite. Zeus. Yes. Yes. So this is the story of Zeus and Io, which is probably one that you guys might be familiar with listening. It's one of the more famous ones. But this is definitely both Zeus and Hera being major jerks. So let's see here. Io was the daughter of Inachus, one of the river gods and king of Argos. She was beautiful, young, and a priestess of the goddess Hera. However, one day, a great god Zeus saw her and fell madly in love with her.
Typical.
Again. I'm like, seriously, Hera should have just plucked his eyes out. I think that would have been that would have been solved all the problems.
100%.
You're gonna pluck Zeus's eyes out.
Yeah,
Good luck.
well, right?
That's why he has no eyes in the Exofathom photo. That's like
Yeah.
the statue.
Took him right out.
Plucked him out. Also, why are they saying love? Did he fall in love?
No,
Or
he fell in lust.
lust. Yes.
Well, he might be a Don Juan type.
He could
Stop.
be.
I
He
don't
could
think
be.
so.
He could be romancing him,
Yeah, you don't know.
Not rape type, maybe, but
Let's see. Io was constantly avoiding his amorous attempts until Zeus took the form of clouds. Okay.
amorous attempts. Rapes. But okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
gonna mute myself. Go.
Okay. let me backtrack there. Io was constantly avoiding his amorous attempts until Zeus took the form of clouds, surrounded her, and made love to her. Unfortunately,
Unmute. Ah.
Hey, will you unmute on cloud sex?
yeah, right. Come on.
This is so messed up. Oh.
You wanted romance. I mean, geez.
Yeah, we're not.
Clouds the same way again.
Is that cloud getting closer? I should cross the street.
Oh man. Okay, so unfortunately, his jealous wife, I like how they say that, jealous wife. Like she doesn't have a reason to be jealous. Unfortunately, his jealous wife Hera learned about this relationship and turned Io into a white cow to punish her and stop them from getting involved. A cow. And not one of those like little, cute little dairy cows, but those like big oxenous sows with the, like this giant water buffalo looking cows.
Water buffalo are really. I mean, they're so cute, but they're like that. So not cute. They're cute.
It's definitely not a got milk spokesperson. That's for sure. All right, so let's see. Io was then tied to an olive tree in Heraion, the holy temple of Hera outside of Argos, and the fierce 100-eyed dog Argus Panoptes was guarding her and keeping Zeus away. However, Zeus found the way to set Io free and disregard his wife without doing it in person. He sent Hermes, the messenger god, to kill Argus, which was an extremely difficult task since Argus always had 50 eyes open and 50 eyes at sleep, which is kind of cool. Kind of a cool party trick, right? You can sleep with your eyes open.
Oh man.
Or at least 50 of them.
That.
Panoptes.
Panoptes. Panoptes that.
Hermes took the form of a shepherd who was good at music and storytelling. Using his skills, Hermes lulled all 100 eyes of Argus to sleep and killed him. Mythology has it that Hera took all 100 eyes of Argus and placed them on the tail of her favorite bird, the peacock, which was her symbol, which is kind of cool. I like how they always tie in a little bit of that why animals are the way they are. Hera could not bear the humiliation anymore. She sent a gadfly to sting the bovine Io continually until she got mad. Indeed, Io was wandering from country to country like a mad cow, always being stung by the gadfly. During her journey, she crossed the path between Propontis and the Black Sea. Since then, this path has been named Bosporus, which means the passage of cows. After a while, in Mount Caucasus, she met the Titan Prometheus, who was chained by Zeus. Prometheus was punished by the Master of Gods for giving the fire to humanity. Since until then, the fire was a privilege only to gods. Prometheus thus was sentenced to be chained on rocks forever. Every day with an eagle that would come and eat his liver. The liver would grow back in again, and at the night and the next morning, the eagle would come back to eat it. This torment would continue for eternity. Prometheus
Still
really messed up. And I really love the story of Prometheus, and I think we'll have to get into that at some time because he's a facsimile for Lucifer, which is interesting in itself, but bringing this sort of knowledge to humanity, and then his torture was awful. And so basically just to compound upon this, Prometheus was the god of forethought, so he could see into the future, which coincidentally, he had a brother named Epimetheus, who was the worst god ever because he was the god of afterthought.
Oh, God.
And
Captain Hindsight.
Yeah, Captain Hindsight, exactly. And he was responsible for giving Pandora the box. So you don't need to thank Pandora for unleashing the woes upon the world. It was actually Epimetheus that let her open the box. And then he realized that it was a bad idea, of course. But Prometheus would get visions, and he saw that at one point a cow would come and save him. And so this is where Io comes in. Io thus met the chained Prometheus during her journey, who gave her comfort. He predicted that one day Io would come back and take her human form and bear the children of Zeus, and that one of her descendants would come and free Prometheus from his torture. Actually, that's the story. One of Io's descendants comes back and frees Prometheus. After many years of wandering, Io eventually reached Egypt, where Zeus gave her back her final form. And I believe Jason is the one that frees Prometheus, Jason and the Argonauts. I don't quote me on that, but I do believe that he was the son of Io that freed Prometheus eventually.
See, I went right to the guy with the mask, just Jason.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Jason and the Golden Fleece. That's a really good story too. I mean, there's so many great stories, but yeah, he had certain trials that he had to do. Actually, I don't know. It could have been Hercules. Was Hercules' job to free Prometheus?
I can Google it.
I'm not sure.
I will go back to this.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's one of my favorite stories about the levels in which Zeus screwed up somebody's life, and Hera definitely didn't help. But I mean, I'm not necessarily blaming her for her part of it, although turning her into a cow is a little bit messed up. And then, subsequently sending a gadfly to sting her across the world is also messed up.
So rude. And Heracles freed Prometheus.
Heracles? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
It got her where she's going, though, that gadfly.
That's true.
It got her to Egypt.
Yeah, she needed to go to Egypt, apparently, for some reason.
To retrieve her final form.
That's right. So Zeus. Maybe it was because Egypt was somewhere that maybe Hera wasn't watching, and so Zeus could go in and intercept. What I do find it is interesting is that Zeus kind of personifies this sort of like blind rage or like blind id, and then sober realization afterwards. So like he does things to give into his impulses, and like he's very impulsive in the moment, and then like almost immediately regrets his decisions. And I think there's something very human about that. It's like the concept of not ever really learning your lesson, but just constantly giving into your impulses only to regret it the next day.
Well, and impulses are very much like lightning strikes.
That's right.
The power of them compels you in a very short time span.
Definitely.
And it's definitely overwhelming.
Or
Those
the electrical, like the electrical impulse in your brain. It's right. The thought is actually a strike of lightning. Teeny tip.
No, that's a great simile. I like that a lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so let's see. There's a couple more things I wanted to bring up before we start to wrap up. But let me see. I see that, Ayla. Thank you for highlighting that. Let's see. She's highlighting the doc as I'm reading it. So I don't need you to though. Thank you though. I'm okay.
What do you think of the cow as like a holy animal? Because there's like a golden calf.
There is, yeah. I don't know. I think it's because they produce so much for humans. You know what I mean? It's like they make they obviously produce milk, but they are also a source of meat. They're also, I don't know if butter was something back then, but I'm sure that yogurt was. So like the concept of dairy and it was. I don't know if there was a god that like deified cows. There very well could have been. And it could have actually been the story of Io that kind of deified cows a little bit. It's quite possible that was one of the contributing factors to that.
And it's strange that like Hera almost seems like a good little, or a great wife to Zeus, if I could get, I guess, macabre with it. But she also has this sort of short-sighted thing of like, turning human, just the amount of punishment, just impulsive, like punishment. And
big time.
Like it's almost like a lateral move of changing Io into a cow because she still has to bring in the gadfly to get her away.
Yeah, it's funny because you're right. Like, a lot of Hera's decisions that are made out of anger or jealousy end up usually biting her in the ass, or not working in the way that she really wanted them to. So, I mean, it's and perhaps that's why the parables are usually so short. It's because like you can really spend a lot of time breaking down, the psychology of all of this. Like, this idea that you shouldn't necessarily act out of impulse all the time because you may not realize the decision you're making, or things like that. Like it's very rich for an analysis.
Yeah, and divorce apparently seems like a good invention over time.
Yeah, it would seem as though Zeus and Hera maybe needed to call it quits. That's for sure.
Right?
Well, I was just noticing too, because she's like the queen or the goddess of marriage and heirs and kings and empires. So it's like, man, the Greeks didn't really think a lot about marriage, did they? They're going to dump that relationship there. Oy.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the reasons that, she was the goddess of marriage, because even though she didn't necessarily want to be married to Zeus, she still got pissed off every time he messed around. Yeah. You know what I mean? And she still was kind of like ride or die with him, because like she could have very well not cared. But obviously she did care, and it was something that enraged her, like, and justly so. So like it does kind of make sense. It's like that responsibility, like Zeus had a responsibility to his wife in order, to not, let his baser instincts rule him in a manner that would disgrace her. And she was all about not wanting to be disgraced. Like she didn't like the concept that, like, in a lot of the respects, she didn't actually care all that much if Zeus slept around. She cared if people found out. That's really what it was. Like she did not like when people knew that it was Zeus either messing with them or other people started talking. That's when she was like, this ain't happening. So,
yeah. Well, but I think it's interesting though that they added empires and heirs and kings in there, because like that gets, I mean, like, I don't know how the dynamics of marriage is back then were. But I mean, just in terms of like a functional kind of sense, like it's a transactional relationship that lets you, build an empire and bestow
Mhm.
your generational wealth and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of interesting that the goddess of that whole transaction.
Oh, you dropped out there, Ayla. You there? Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Ayla might have dropped out for a sec.
No. So I guess to add on her point, like, or to comment on her point, the romantic natures of marriages didn't come till like way later. So yeah, it was like mainly a tool to sort of build business relationships, which
Yeah, that's true.
which may mean that like promiscuity may not carry the same weight that it carries in our society.
Right. Well, and I think it's also interesting that maybe there was a recognition that monogamy was good for a functioning society. And even though it necessarily wasn't exactly the natural process, there was always going to be sort of this enforcer of monogamy. And that kind of was the embodiment of Hera. She was, for whatever, impulses Zeus had, she was the one that was trying to keep them in check. And, so I think that that's why she kind of had that sort of like that connection to empire and kingdoms and stuff like that. Oh, you're Ayla, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, thanks
There we
for
go.
kicking me out right when I got really. No, I'm just kidding.
We didn't kick you out.
No, my internet died.
Do you need me to like step back a bit? Like,
so you're gonna turn somebody into a cow right now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling jealous and vengeful, guys.
Oh no, I think you're right, but I do find it interesting though. It's only when it like came to light that it was Zeus that she would act. Like as long as it could be kept in between her and like Zeus, it was fine.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it became public, it was like, all right, now I have to act.
Yeah. I have to show face, and yeah. I mean, like, because in a lot of respects, Hera didn't hold a lot of love for Zeus. She begrudgingly bore him some children, and then she wasn't really keen on their relationship anyway. She was off doing her own things in the world. But yeah, I think that has to do a lot with honor and integrity, and she just didn't want people talking bad about her. So
yeah,
I can get that.
I mean, I could start to almost pull in draws to like modern day gossip culture.
Totally.
Within relationships, like as a single person, I don't got to worry about it. But in relationships, there's definitely been like what other couples do, and that becomes like a huge topic of conversation. And like, yeah, it's interesting how there's still like parallels between Hera and then that sort of gossip that we see now.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I definitely. Ayla, you got anything else to add? Oh, she left again?
She dropped out? Oh, man.
No, she's on. There you go. Are you there, Ayla? Oh, unmute. Okay. Well, it seems like Ayla is malfunctioning a little bit, so I think we're probably going to have to call it anyways, but we were wrapping up. I just wanted to bring up a couple things real quick of just the parallels that Zeus has in other cultures, because, sky gods are present in almost every culture and every society and religion. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing that we can touch base on. So let's see. Ancient Indo-European pantheons had gods associated with the sky, which ruled over all other gods. In Hinduism, they had Dyaus. The Greeks had Zeus. The Romans had Jupiter. And scholars used these deities to reconstruct the original sky god of Proto-Indo-European religion called the Deus, or Dyaeus, Dyeus, which is kind of like very close to Zeus. The mythologies and powers of these sky gods are similar, though not identical. And while Zeus has his own lore and mythology, Jupiter and Dyaus have very few surviving myths associated with them. And then they also come to talk about how the Egyptian Ammon and the Etruscan Tinea were analogs for the sky god Zeus, which I thought was kind of interesting. Ayla, are you back now?
Hello.
There you go.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
Yeah. Anyways, I was just wrapping up and saying like that there's a lot of throughout different cultures and times, there's always been sort of like a sky god that rules over all other deities, or some sort of high god that has the ruling of the skies. And I'm sure we'll get more into that when we get to other gods in this series. But I was just wondering, what do you think? I mean, aside from the obvious, like, oh, it's the sky, but what do you think the sky god is always usually the most, the highest on the hierarchy?
I think it's because we look up to the heavens. So whatever controls those heavens must be the highest of all.
Right. Yeah, I just feel like it's interesting because in a lot of respects, we don't necessarily look at Poseidon the same way. Like we don't necessarily look at a tree god and call that the god.
Yeah, I think too it becomes like sky god, or the sky is just hard to obtain, right? Like we haven't learned how to fly. It took how long to learn how to fly? Like
thousands of years.
Yeah, so that's why all of this is kind of sewed into like that's the highest god of gods. At least that's what I see it as. And like Poseidon, you can touch the ocean. You can touch.
That's
you can
true.
Get real mythical with cracking giant squid, but like all the creatures in the sea and whatnot. Even like with Hades, we can dig underground, but
skies are ever untouchable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really makes sense.
Even if you get there, there's still more sky.
That's true. So my question then is, and this will be my final question for the evening, and it's, we're going to go out with a bang here on Exofathom. So do you think that it's just a coincidence or just some sort of archetype that we all been, like you said, looking up in the sky and creating these deities? Or is it possible that we've all in our ancient beings and societies have witnessed deities in the sky physically?
Oh.
It goes a little bit into the ancient aliens concept, right?
Well, maybe a bit of both. Like clouds. I mean, you can see clouds. I can look out and see them. But you never, like, I can see like some mythical tethers there. And I could definitely see a time where some sort of mythical gods were in the sky doing stuff. And really they might have been, like you said, like aliens or things like that.
Yeah.
Could have, if you want to get real weird time travelers, because I wouldn't mind going back in time then and being like, look, I'm Zeus, haha, and then leave.
That's true. That's very true. Turn somebody into a cow and then
look at my secret gang. Look, I turned you into a cow. All right, bye.
Yeah. Well, and it would make sense too that the lightning bolt would spark the brain to think of some sort of omnipotent god in the sky, because it's such an incredible force of power. And you got to think, even in ancient times, if lightning struck, that was bad news. That means something's catching on fire, and you better be far away from those strikes because you don't want anything to do with them. But I think it's kind of fun to think about the alien angle, because there is a good theory that all of the Greek gods were aliens that lived on Mount Olympus and just came down and kind of messed with the people for a little while, long enough for them to create a mythology about them, and then left. I mean, it's out there, but I think it's kind of a fun concept to think about, because we don't really know, and indeed the Bhagavad Gita, one of the oldest religious texts, talk about machines in the sky and wheels in the sky that are used by the gods to travel. So,
and too, like, put yourself in the position of those alien beings. It's like, why not mess with the less evolved race a bit? Why not play this out?
Who would have no concept of who you are. I mean, like, that's, to me, that's one of the best explanations as to why we don't see aliens as much anymore. It's like if which would be easier, to go back into a certain point of time where humans had no concept of what aliens were, or do it right now?
It's all because of Prometheus. He gave us fire, and it was all over from there.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is his fault. He should have saw that coming.
Totally.
Yeah. He did. By far the best
did.
Titan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely the best Titan for sure. His brother is useless.
Well, you know, you win some, you lose some. That's why
That's
you just
right.
have more kids. You'll be okay.
That's right, exactly. That was the motto back then. Just keep having more kids, you'll be good. Well, anyways, guys, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I am interested by the proto god, the deus, because if you drop that Y, you start to get close to like Deus Ex Machina, or like being
Right.
saved by God. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I would like to know more about it, but there's actually very little information. I can look it up, and maybe if I can find enough for an episode, we can definitely do an episode on that for sure.
But you're definitely reaching back to like pre-written history stuff.
Yeah, like pre-Babylon, pre-Assyria, like you're talking like cavemen, most likely. Yeah.
You're reaching back.
Yeah. So I'll do some digging, but that'll be pretty interesting. Ayla, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Well, if you do that episode, I would like your cold open to be like, we are going back, way back before blah blah blah. Like, I don't know why, but that
The
just
year is 6000 BCE.
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Just make it real epic.
Super epic, super epic.
Mhm.
Do it
Mastodons and
style.
saber-toothed tigers roamed the world.
True.
Yeah.
I like it. But yeah, no, if I was going to add anything, I would just say beware of clouds.
Yes.
You never
don't
know.
let a mist get all hanky-panky with you, that's for sure.
Said hanky panky. I love it.
And don't trust birds, apparently.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't hold them up to your breast. It's
No.
bad.
No.
Don't hug a bird, because apparently that's a gateway. So
It's just gonna turn into some epic godliness that's gonna burn on your skin.
yeah, you're right. Just
Oh, God.
dematerialize you.
Jeez.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. We had a really great time talking. I want to thank my lovely co-hosts. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate the conversation, and definitely couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you very much. And we couldn't do it without you guys that listen too. So we really appreciate you, and thank you very much for giving us a shot. And I hope you enjoyed, and please leave us a comment. We love to interact with you guys, so if you feel froggy, leap and just let us know. Until then, please check out thinkering.space for all of our episodes. I know that Keelan should be coming back tomorrow evening with If Numbers Can Talk, and Joe as well should be doing the plank at some point this later this week, and we'll be back with Thinkering at 3 p.m. on Sunday. So we hope you guys have a great week. And you stay out there, Cognonauts, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Thanks, guys.